Welcome to the History on Screen channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. During the 1980s, the New York subway became known worldwide for its urban decay and tense atmosphere, being seen as a symbol of a difficult period in the city, also marked by the growth of graffiti and changes that affected urban generations. In the early 20th century, inventors such as Dupuis tried to combine cycling with flight in pioneering aviation attempts, showing the creativity of the era in testing transportation alternatives, which helped support later advances in modern aviation. Dr. Harvey Cushing, considered one of the fathers of modern neurosurgery, stood out in the early 20th century for developing innovative techniques in brain procedures, contributing greatly to better clinical outcomes and expanding understanding of the nervous system. The 1900 Olympic Games, held in Paris, marked the first official participation of American athletes in track and field on European soil, showing the rise of the United States as an international sports power and establishing lasting ties in the global Olympic scene. During the marathon at the 2004 Athens Olympic Games, Vanderlei de Lima was leading the race when Cornelius Horan unexpectedly disrupted his pace, an episode that changed the direction of the competition and moved the world because of his sportsmanship. In 1932, Dr. Eric Salomon secretly managed to photograph a session of the United States Supreme Court by hiding a camera in his cast, an action forbidden at the time, highlighting the search for transparency and freedom of the press during a period of major social and political change. During the late 19th century and early 20th century, wedding photographs became symbols of social status and lasting family records, marking the importance of marriage rituals in preserving the memory and identity of families of that time. The heavy use of artillery in France in 1918 marked the final phase of World War I, a period when decisive offensives sped up the end of the conflict, showing the destructive impact of military technology on the outcome and the changes of the 20th century. The Great Ball Court of Chichén Itzá, recognized as the largest and most famous of the Maya civilization, shows the ceremonial and social importance of this sport in the ancient world, also serving as an arena for rituals tied to political power and religious beliefs of the time. During the early 20th century, devices like the chest-expanding machine were popular in home gyms, reflecting Western society's growing interest in fitness and the health benefits connected to regular exercise at that time. During the 20th century, mechanical instruments like the one shown were common for monitoring physical development, especially in school or health settings, reflecting a growing concern with tracking children's growth as preventive medicine advanced. LinkedIn was founded in 2002 during the rise of professional social networks that emerged at the start of the 21st century, marking a major change in how people looked for job opportunities and business connections online. This movement supported digital networking. After the war, the arrival of the first televisions in the Soviet Union represented a milestone in home modernization, reflecting major technological progress and national pride, as access to television expanded the reach of state propaganda and changed family life. The offer of a gentle stomach massage with the help of a mechanical device points to the early 20th century, a time when technological advances and beliefs in physical therapies sought to promote health and well-being through innovative methods, influencing clinical practices of the period. The concept of foot massage gained attention in the West, mainly in the 1970s and 1980s, when techniques such as reflexology began to be used to promote relaxation and stimulate blood flow, influencing the rise of specific self-massage devices. During the 1956 Summer Olympic Games in Melbourne, Australian swimmer Murray Rose stood out by winning 3 gold medals, strengthening Australia's sports reputation internationally and marking an era of Olympic excellence in the country. On the Isle of Man in 1955, motorcycles such as the Bra with sidecar represented the golden age of two-wheel competition and tourism, a period that helped establish the famous Tourist Trophy, an essential event in the development of British motorcycling. During the growth of the champagne industry in France, many safety measures were adopted in wine cellars because of the constant risk of bottle explosions during fermentation, establishing important industrial advances for worker protection. In 1955, the coronation of King Mahendra took place in Nepal, a moment that marked the consolidation of his power and later the introduction of the authoritarian panchayat system, a structure that restricted democracy in the country until his death in 1972 and had effects for decades. During World War II, Stuka bombers became notorious because of their decisive role in air operations coordinated by Axis forces, using striking visual features, such as painted faces, to strengthen their presence in aerial battles. The beginning of transcontinental flights marked a major transformation in transportation by connecting different regions in only a few hours, enabling advances in communication and tourism while also boosting commercial aviation in the early 20th century, bringing continents and cultures closer together. During the Mexican Revolution in 1913, soldiers used unusual combat tactics to improve their chances of protection, such as using horses as cover, reflecting the harshness of the conflict that sought deep political change in Mexico. During the 1908 London Olympic Games, female archers took part in the national round, symbolizing progress for women in sports, since archery was one of the first events to allow female participation, encouraging discussions about gender equality in the early 20th century. In 1947 in Paris, the debut of Christian Dior's collection popularized the so-called New Look, revolutionizing post-war women's fashion with a defined waist and full skirts, challenging standards while also provoking strong public reaction because its luxury contrasted with difficult times. The development of the commercial biplane trimotor marked an important phase in early commercial aviation, offering greater cargo capacity and flight safety during the 1920s and 1930s, which boosted air transport for passengers and goods around the world. The development of machines for physical strengthening and rehabilitation grew especially after the World Wars, when many former combatants needed motor recovery, encouraging essential innovations for modern physical therapy and advances in clinical rehabilitation practices. The concept of motorized exercise equipment gained attention in the 1960s, a period of home fitness innovation when manufacturers began creating devices such as motorized saddles, promoting physical health and automation in body care. During the 1960s, the church known as the Church of God with Signs Following gained notoriety for holding religious ceremonies in which believers handled snakes, based on the biblical passage of Mark 16, 17, and 18, which caused controversy and public attention. In May 1945, after the liberation of Dachau, people such as Jean Voste, born in the Belgian Congo, tried to resume daily life amid the ruins of the German regime, showing the diversity and resilience present among those affected by that period. During the late 19th century and early 20th century, the use of small animal-drawn vehicles for deliveries was common in rural areas, and dogs were often used in some regions to carry milk to homes, becoming an essential part of local food supply logistics. Shortly after the end of World War II, in 1947, The popularity of BSA motorcycles in England marked a period of economic rebuilding and transportation innovation, highlighting the importance of these motorcycles for affordable mobility amid rationing and post-war challenges. During the 1940s, women began breaking barriers in traditionally male activities, such as riding Meister motorcycles, reflecting social change as World War II pushed women's participation in different European industrial sectors. During the rise of exotic pets in the mid-20th century, Miss Beth Pitt gained attention by walking with her doe, Star Message, showing Western society's fascination with novelty and the role of pets as symbols of status and urban curiosity. During World War II, 1943 was a period when industrial cities such as Manchester, England, faced frequent bombings, forcing families to adapt everyday life and children to find ways to play and keep hope alive even amid hardship. During Belgian colonial rule in the Congo, expeditions by Europeans such as Attilio Gatti in 1930 showed the use of local populations in scientific and hunting ventures, reinforcing the exploitation and social imbalances imposed by European colonialism in Central Africa. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the Soviet Union went through deep political and social transformation, marked by the dissolution of the regime in 1991, affecting families and celebrated athletes such as Kako Mshvenyaradze, a leading name in Soviet water polo. In 1937, the opening of the Golden Gate Bridge marked an engineering achievement in the United States when a silver chain was cut during the opening ceremony, symbolizing the start of an era of progress and connection between San Francisco and Marin County. This event strengthened the bridge's symbolic status. In Imperial China, the use of the wooden cangue as a public punishment represented a method of social control used until the early 20th century, marking the severity of the traditional Chinese justice system and showing the social structures of the time. In 1968, French inventor Alain Dom developed the spaghetti spinner, a utensil created to automate the motion of twirling pasta, reflecting the innovative spirit of the period. This invention illustrates the era's efforts toward home modernization, seeking practical solutions for everyday life. During the opening ceremony of the 1960 Olympic Games in Rome, protests marked the event when the Olympic Committee required Taiwan to compete under the name Formosa instead of Republic of China, showing Cold War geopolitical tensions and affecting international representation. In early 20th century Cuba, the reading of literary texts and news by a designated reader was an essential part of the routine in cigar factories, promoting education among workers and helping spread political and social ideas before the 1959 revolution. On September 1, 1945, Lomonosov Moscow State University held its first class after the end of World War II, marking the restart of higher education in the Soviet Union and symbolizing national efforts toward intellectual and scientific rebuilding after the war. In the late 1920s, the growing popularity of automobiles changed leisure for Americans, making trips to natural areas such as Palouse River Canyon in Washington easier, promoting road tourism and building a new culture of family travel. In the Netherlands in the early 20th century, basic education went through major reforms, with increased school access and changes in teaching methods, reflecting social changes driven by industrialization and the strengthening of children's rights in the country. During World War I in 1914, British airships flying over strategic ports such as Ostend marked the advance of aerial reconnaissance tactics, essential for monitoring enemy movements and showing the impact of military technology on the European conflict. During the Civil War in Biafra, Nigeria in 1968, The conflict was marked by extreme conditions and a severe humanitarian crisis, highlighting the impact of the blockade imposed by the central government on the population, a situation that drew international attention. In the early days of North American aviation, Glenn Curtiss and Lieutenant John Towers played decisive roles in developing aircraft that advanced military testing, highlighting the technological revolution that marked the first years of the 20th century and influenced modern aviation. Veterans of the Napoleonic Army in 1858 represented the generation shaped by the Napoleonic Wars, which transformed Europe between 1803 and 1815, promoting new military tactics and influencing several 19th century nationalist movements in different European countries. In the early 20th century, French knife sharpeners worked lying face down to prevent lower back pain, a technique inherited from traditional craft practices such as those promoted by the historic Maison Fondée en 1664, Gilles de l'Air Purier Sauvage in Chiers. On July 17, 1938, during a lifeboat race on the Danube Canal in Vienna, a public demonstration took place under German government control, marked by the use of uniforms and the display of symbols of the new regime after the annexation of Austria. Founded in 1939 in California, Hewlett-Packard began its activities in a simple garage, a symbol of the birth of Silicon Valley. This milestone is recognized as the starting point of the technological revolution that would turn the region into a global center of innovation. Founded in 1965 as Pete's Super Submarines, the restaurant gave rise to the Subway chain, which would become one of the largest fast food franchises in the world, marking a major change in eating habits and the global fast food market in the following decades. In 1945, Guzenko's defection from the Soviet embassy in Ottawa marked the beginning of the Cold War, by revealing a vast Soviet spy network in the West, causing a wave of anti-communist investigations and diplomatic tension between major world powers. On November 10, 1938, Maryland inventor George Stern presented his latest invention, marking the innovative spirit of the decade before World War II and reflecting the growing interest in the United States in scientific experiments and new technologies. The tradition of readers in cigar factories began in Cuba in the 1860s and, by the turn of the 20th century, also became established in places like Ybor City in the United States, promoting education and social awareness among workers who were often unable to read. During the 1930s, Moscow went through deep urban changes directed by the Soviet regime, marked by the expansion of squares and monumental buildings to assert state power and strengthen the socialist ideal, shaping the capital as a symbol of the new era. During the liberation of France in 1944, women identified as collaborators with the German occupation forces were often publicly exposed through head shaving, a symbolic act meant to mark them before society after the war. Soviets in Berlin in 1945 illustrate the turning point of World War II in Europe, marked by the entry of Soviet Union troops into the German capital, indicating Germany's imminent surrender and the resulting reshaping of the European geopolitical landscape. In the Azores archipelago, hooded capotes stand out as a traditional part of women's clothing and a symbol of island identity, especially between the 18th and 19th centuries, reflecting Azorean influence on the culture and ways of life of the Atlantic islands. Built around the 11th century, the Temple of Kukulkan at Chichén Itzá highlights the importance of the Maya civilization and its advanced architectural techniques, serving as a ceremonial and astronomical center and standing today as a symbol of Mexican cultural heritage. During the 1920s in Berlin, experimental rejuvenation methods gained attention, such as those promoted by Dr. Heinz, which included applications of animal-based substances, ultraviolet light, and exercise, reflecting the era's fascination with unusual scientific advances. During 1881, in the Kakheti region of Georgia, wine production represented a centuries-old tradition that supported the local rural economy. Since ancestral methods of storage in large containers preserved historic techniques still valued today. During the 1870s, Egypt was going through intense social and economic changes, driven by modernization reforms begun by local rulers, while the trade of metal utensils in the market reflected centuries-old traditions amid growing European influence. When Muhammad Ali lit the Olympic cauldron at the opening of the 1996 Summer Games in Atlanta, the gesture symbolized not only his importance in sports, but also the ability of sports to promote resilience and unity, marking an iconic moment in world Olympic history. During the Labor Day celebration in 1968, Lviv, Ukraine, served as the setting for parades organized under Soviet control, officially marking the role of socialism in everyday life and serving as crucial moments to strengthen the Soviet Union's cultural and political presence in the region. During 1935, a period marked by intense technological progress and scientific innovation, Hungarian engineer Stefan became known for developing a machine supposedly capable of making people and objects invisible, reflecting the experimental spirit and the search for the limits of knowledge at the time. During the early 20th century, the search for technological alternatives to traditional physical activities produced mechanisms that simulated everyday experiences, such as riding a horse, reflecting society's fascination with mechanized leisure and bodily well-being. During the 1904 Summer Olympic Games in St. Louis, Missouri, unusual events such as barrel jumping showed the creativity and experimentation that characterized that edition, a historic milestone for connecting the Olympics to the World's Fair and expanding the event's international reach. In the New York subway during the 1950s, automatic chocolate vending machines showed the practicality and urban modernity of post-war life in the United States, when small purchases for just 1 cent symbolized easier access to everyday consumption in big cities. In March 1939, after the forced loss of Czechoslovakia's independence to Germany, then-President Emil Hácha returned from Berlin to Prague, deeply shaken, symbolizing the country's collapse before World War II and the expansion of authoritarian government. 50 years after resisting the Third French Siege of Tarragona in 1809, these veterans were photographed in 1869, celebrating the Spanish defense during the Napoleonic Wars, a milestone that showed the importance of local resistance against the French invasion. By highlighting the Olympic torch ceremony at Wembley Stadium during the Summer Games of June 1948, the moment shows the return of the Olympics after World War II, symbolizing hope and rebuilding under the motto of Pierre de Coubertin, the founder of the modern games. In 1925, Paris hosted a banquet honoring French soldiers deeply affected by World War I, marking a national effort to recognize and reintegrate these combatants, whose lives had been profoundly changed by the conflict that began in 1914. Founded in 1923, the Walt Disney Company began its activities in a simple wooden shed, symbolizing the humble start of one of the world's largest entertainment empires, whose influence would span decades and change the history of animation and film. Although Thiers had been recognized for centuries as France's main center for cutlery production, the city launched its own model, Le Thiers, only in 1994, strengthening its craft identity and further increasing regional prestige. During the 1950s in the United States, laws known as Jim Crow enforced racial separation in public spaces, as shown by the sign reading "For Colored Patrons Only," reflecting social barriers that deeply shaped everyday life at the time. In 1966, Bobby Gibb got around the restriction on women in official competitions by entering the Boston Marathon without authorization, becoming the first woman to complete the course, which marked an important step toward gender equality in world sports.